All right, good evening and welcome to the January 2025 edition of the Board of Electric Commissioners, City of Burlington. As always, we meet here at 585 Pine, second Wednesday of the month, and we encourage all ratepayers, Burlingtonians, interested folks, come on down and join the conversation. We'll start off with the first item on the agenda is the agenda. Do we have any changes, additions, moving things around, anything like that? No?
No.
All right. We'll move to item number 2, which is the minutes of the December 11th, 2024 meeting. If there are there any changes or corrections that are not of a, misspellings and stuff that the clerk can deal with, please, you could make note of that now, if possible. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes of December 11th, 2024 as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I ever hear a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor of accepting the minutes of December 11th as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed indicate by saying nay. 4 ayes, no nays. The minutes pass. Item number 3, public forum. This is the time where we open up to anybody who's here, whether in-house or online or whatever, to have their say. And I don't believe we have anybody here from the public. Yeah, even online, that's all staff. So again, I'll repeat, second Wednesday of the month here, 585 Pine, 5 o'clock. Come on down, join the conversation. We'll move on to item number 4, which is the Commissioner's Corner. This is an opportunity for commissioners to kind of say whatever's on their mind that's been cooking for the last month, or anything cool and interesting and relevant to what we're doing. And I open the floor. Okay. We'll move on next to the General Manager update with General Manager Springer.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Few items just to highlight here, and then I'll give a little more detail on the incentive announcement that we made today that was previewed in the GM update. We do have a battery storage RFP that's out currently for 5 megawatt, up to 5 megawatt battery, and looking at more than one potentially if we get sufficient bids. So it's not exclusive to one site or one battery. So we'll keep the commission updated as that process moves along. The RFP is posted. I'll skip over the highlight item, but glad to be a sponsor there. I did include a link to a commentary utility dive that we recently published, and also Green Energy Times January issue. We're expecting to have an article there that's going to focus some on BED's work and builds off of, I think, what the utility dive commentary was all about. Let's see, we're going to be working very soon with the Department of Permitting and Regulated Buildings on the energy benchmarking ordinance that was passed by the council back in December. This will cover buildings 10,000 square feet to 4,999 square feet. In the commercial sector, we have about 4 months to get them started, and then they have a year plus to kind of monitor their energy use. And then separately, we'll probably be working with the TUC over the summer on what additional policy might flow from the energy benchmarking, but the benchmarking is the first step. Long-standing odyssey at the Marketplace Garage now concluded. We have the second public network level 3 in our BED network is activated and has been used by customers, so we can confirm that it's working. We had a lot of challenges with some of the equipment there, but that's all resolved. So we have a new level 3 fast charger down at the Marketplace Garage, and thanks to a lot of work from Emily, the EV charging grant's been submitted. We're waiting on the Federal Highway folks to get back to us to confirm that it's obligated. Obviously, we're working to make sure that happens before the 20th of January, so we'll keep you updated on that. And then just lastly, we had a really nice in the Truck Bay event with the mayor and partners from Old Spokes Home and Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund event today to announce our 2025 rebates and incentives. We have a press release. I won't cover every aspect of it. I'm sure you may have seen it, but a couple key points. One is a lot of the updates really focus on equity, adding enhanced rebates above and beyond for low-income customers in categories where we haven't had them before, like residential electric lawnmowers and our e-bike program. The e-bikes, we doubled the rebate from $300 to $600, and then for income-eligible customers, up to $850, or up to 50% of the cost of a bike. So, great opportunity there with the local bike shops and with Old Spokes Home to really help more customers be able to access an e-bike. We're really excited about that. Across the heat pump and heat pump hot water categories, we boosted incentives for income-qualified customers. We boosted the pre-owned electric vehicle incentive for income-qualified customers from $1,500 to $2,000. We made a number of other updates as well that I think should help us continue some of our progress. And obviously happening in the context of the state being out of funding for its EV rebate program, the federal government potentially making changes in the near future that are negative in this space. So we're prepared to respond further if the federal government takes negative actions, but for now we're pretty pleased to be able to offer the incentives that we have. We also had 2 pilot programs discussed, both of which we're going to cover a bit tonight. They're items on the agenda. Dynamic Organics, which is part of the Building Giants grant. We talked about the idea, separate from that particular aspect of the program, of the $5 a month heat pump bill credit that we're hoping to roll out for pilot program this year as part of that same grant that's going to be supporting the Dynamic Organics work that you're going to hear about later. And then also we touched on the Moduly partnership, which you also have tonight as an agenda item. The idea being that we'll be able to help not only single-family homes, but renters be able to pilot this new modular battery system with us because it plugs directly into a 120-volt outlet. So no installation required, nothing permanent, and great opportunity to test peak reduction and outage response with our renter customers as well as homeowners. So look forward to diving into the details more on that, and that's everything that I've got. Glad to answer any questions.
Going once? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the financial review. With Emily.
Okay. Good evening. So these are November results. We had a net income for the month of November of $824,000 compared to a budgeted net income of $883,000, so a variance of just under $60,000. Going from the top, a very small positive variance with sales to customers. Other revenues were down, most of that EEU reimbursements. And then power supply revenues, so those are the sale of renewable energy certificates. Those were down compared to budget by $66,000. Moving on to expense, net power supply expense had a very small variance, negative variance of $50,000. Within net power supply, the story this month, we were over budget on fuel. McNeil ran about 14% more than budget in November. Wind production, which, as you may remember, is like has often, it feels like the last 18 months been below budget. Actually, wind production was above budget in November, so that contributed to an unfavorable variance in purchase power. And then transmission provided some offset. Transmission was overall under budget. So net power supply, again, $50,000 over budget, a pretty minuscule variance on a kind of $3 million, expense budget for the month. Other operating and maintenance expense was positive versus budget by $134,000. That is even with the health insurance error that we discovered. So the health insurance expenses in November are overstated. Again, that will be corrected. We'll see that correction happening in the January results. And then below the line, other income and deductions, unfavorable to budget by 26,000. We got more on interest income, less on interest income than budget, more on unrealized gain on investments, some things canceled out. So fairly small variance there. Year to date, we are at an actual net income of $2.5 million compared to a budget of $3.2 million. So we're still around $700,000 off from budget. This month's results worsened that position a little bit, but not significantly. Any questions on this before I move to the next page? Okay. I'll move on to capital. Oh, I just found a mistake that I did not catch before. This says October. This really is November. So as of November, year to date, we've spent 27% of the total capital budget. Generation's about 44%, which is pretty close to sort of on pace if you were to spend the same amount of capital every month. Let's see, the Winooski Dam project is very much underway. And in distribution, I can report that Munir let me know that three switches that are required for pretty big distribution projects this fiscal year have arrived. Engineering is checking them out and making sure they're meeting specifications, but that's good news. We'll have the equipment to do those projects. And then in the IT space, the team has been continuing to work hard on our SCADA replacement, which is going well. We are going to go live with that system like later this week or next week, so imminently. Just kind of like going through the final punch list. And then we are kicking off the CIS project in the next 2 weeks, just looking to schedule a date with our vendor. And then moving down to cash, we had an operating cash balance as of November 30 of $11.16 million. That compared to budget, our budget was 10.765, so about $400,000 better than budget. And then the credit rating metrics there, 4.96 for debt service, 1.3 for adjusted debt service, and 146 days cash on hand, considering the $10 million line of credit. Questions?
Questions?
Yeah.
A lot of red, but small numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah, this feels more like what I'm used to seeing.
We also, just to point out, December and particularly January, very, very high energy prices, which, if we were exposed more to the market, would be more of a challenge. But we've been able to run McNeil pretty steadily during those high price times. Like I'm looking right now, the day ahead price is $200 some odd. Typical day ahead would be $30 or $40 in a normal day. And that's been elevated that way for a chunk of time in December and January. So as we get to the December and then particularly the January financials, I anticipate there will be some indication of that showing up in some of the metrics that we're looking at.
And how will that impact those metrics? Because it seems to me like that would be one of those benefits that you don't really get to see, because we're not as exposed to the energy markets.
Well, we'll see it because we're going to get the higher price as we're exchanging energy with ISO. So if you were exposed, you'd be paying more. But if you have an asset where you're generating and selling in, you're going to get paid a higher amount. So, in some cases, that's 3, 4, 5 times what a typical kind of price would be. And it's not just that it's spiked, but it's been elevated. Even during the off hours, it's been in the $100, $120 range. So pretty elevated. I think more so than we've seen maybe since 2022.
However, those levels are in line, generally speaking, with our average per megawatt hour price that we've assumed in the budget for these years, for these months, I mean. So this is the traditionally high-priced time of year. We budgeted it for it to be a typically high-priced year. For a period of time this fall, the energy forwards had kind of softened, and so we were projecting that we'd be worse off than budget. they've come back. So now we're projecting to be at, or hopefully maybe even a little bit better than budget.
So I'd like to just offer a quick note on that, which is that I mean, yes, they're elevated, but these are temperatures in Boston in the 20s during the day. This is not a minus 10 degree, deep Arctic freeze. And so it is interesting to contemplate what would happen if we do get one of those deep negative temperature, weeks or anything like that. So again, yeah, these are high, these are what we budgeted, but they're not anything like as high as they can go. So I would just offer that. And so to the extent we have excess energy in the winter period, then we actually are gaining against budget. So.
Other questions?
Oh, and one last thing I offer too, that of course recs are on top of that. So the revenue, say for McNeil, will be in the 20 cents a kilowatt hour range when energy prices are 160, because there'll be $40 recs in addition.
That's good for us. Don't go away too fast, James. You're up next. Any last questions on that? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7 is the Moduly battery storage pilot contract. James.
I think I'm running slides for this, so
Natalie on
I'll
slides.
just stay
Cool.
here
All
and push the cursor. Can you see that, James?
All right, so she's got the first slide up, James.
I'm just clicking repeatedly to try to get my microphone to come on. So I'd like to first thank my driver, Emily. Emily, thank you very much. I also would like to note that Ajay Pandy and Nate Gunnish are with me today if there are technical questions. As the people who are actually in charge, particularly of the Building Giants program. You met them last month during our overview. So they're going to be here for the questions on the next item if we need them. First, though, as Darren mentioned, we are proposing to do a residential storage pilot program. Under this program, we'd acquire 10 of these Moduly UL-listed storage devices. They're a simple plug-in. They plug into a 110-volt outlet, and they can deliver power and backup power. You can get more capability out of them with a bit of hardwiring, but what we're proposing initially is that we would loan these devices to customers for a period of time, let them try them out. They would have to agree that they would keep them connected to Wi-Fi, and that we could use them for load reduction during critical periods. But we'd, of course, try not to draw the batteries down if we thought for any reason there might be reliability problems. So the idea is to give customers an ability to sort of feel what it's like to have a storage device in their house without having to necessarily incur all of the wiring costs that would be associated with something like a Tesla Powerwall or the like. We will also have the right to use Moduly's web services, and those web services will allow us to control those devices for peak load reduction. And just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the contract, it's $73,000 one-time capital expense, and that is for the 10 devices and the shipping. And then there will be ongoing operating cost expense for access to their control software. Those costs are essentially going to be capped. If we decide to expand this to a larger program, the $10,000 annual operating cost would not go up. But of course, we would have more costs for batteries if we are providing those, or incentives if we're giving an incentive for them. Again, as noted there, the one-time expense of $73,500 for the actual hardware will be capitalized. And at the end of the residential portion of the pilot program, the devices will come back to BED for use in reducing BED's on load, which is how we get to be able to capitalize them, among other things. So that is the gist of the program. Either Darren or I can answer questions about the program itself. I can answer questions if there are questions on the contract. And Emily, can you flip to the next slide for just a second? That's the requested motion. It is substantially in the form, just in case there's any last minute minor changes like typos or things like that. But we're not anticipating anything that's price related or anything material.
So what do these things do, actually?
And that's my question too.
So, James, I'll take a stab at it. So right there on the bottom is an inverter, I believe. And then the
this
stack,
piece.
is modular, 2.5 kW batteries. So the more you stack up, the more you have. So we'll have the 5 at the top and the 7.5. So if you are a homeowner or renter, let's say, so you're going to leave it plugged into an appropriate like outlet that's convenient for you, we'll be able to ping it during peak periods and say, hey, can you discharge energy back to that circuit and reduce the home's energy use during peak times for cost savings, like we would do with a bigger battery, except this case it's working with a particular home through a particular circuit back to the panel. For the person, other than just the coolness of having the battery and helping us test it, it has multiple outlets on it. So if you needed to, let's say, plug something in that was somewhere else in the house and you didn't have a convenient outlet, you could theoretically run something off of it. Let's say there was an outage, you want to plug into your refrigerator and a lamp or something, you could run things off of it. So it's not like a whole
run an
home.
outdoor party, run a,
Yeah.
a block party kind of situation.
Provided our contract terms allow for that.
Yeah.
But, it's not
Might
like
void
a
the
whole
warranty.
home. Like a Tesla Powerwall would basically feed your entire home. But if you were, let's say, a renter and there was a power outage, you could keep your refrigerator running, you could plug in a lamp, you could plug in, anything, a laptop or a phone to charge. So it has some functionality in that sense. Yeah.
Depending on where it's plugged in the house, it's that particular circuit in the house that.
That circuit is backed up automatically, but you could also plug things into the outlets in it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, and Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, you spent as much time with these folks as I have. The extra wiring I talked about is with more wiring, I believe you could set this up for whole home backup capability, but we're not obviously proposing that in the pilot program because you're only going to have the device for a certain number of months. But
That's
if
right.
the devices are working well, the controls working well, it may be a viable option to a Tesla Powerwall to actually wire it to give whole home backup. And is that correct, Darren? I believe that's correct.
Yeah, you could do with this what you wanted to do with the Tesla Powerwall, but we're testing the capacity it has to do something different than the Powerwall, which is to run off the regular outlet. To me, that was the thing that got me when we first met with these folks, is we were upstairs and they plugged it into the wall and they were like, this is our battery. And I said, wow, that's interesting and innovative. I've seen a couple other companies that are working on a similar thing that are more scaled companies. So I don't know if Moduly's solution is the only solution in the marketplace for this, but it's definitely unique enough, and we have a great partnership with them through Delta Climb that it made sense to see if we could pilot it. And the other piece I liked is, this is something we can pilot with renters. There's so few things that we get to pilot with renters because it requires property owner approval or permanent installation, and this is something where a renter could have a 5 kW unit here and plug it into the wall and be part of our pilot project and have reliability. Obviously, we don't have many outages, knock on wood, Manir, but for the occasional time that somebody has one, this could provide some capability as well.
And again, the UL listing is huge, I think, because there's no permitting in Burlington for that. It's a device. So it's like buying a VCR. So customers will be able to do this without having to go through the permitting process. It's very much an ability to try something easily.
How large is it?
It's I would say not even quite the size of this table.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, they brought one in, right?
I could pick it up and
They're
walk around
this
with it.
wide.
Yeah.
And then depending on how they stack.
Like a
you know.
college dorm fridge or
That's
something.
what I was thinking.
Yes.
And it looks almost like kind of an iPhone type product. It's very sleek. It's a little bit futuristic, Nice.
But if you put an Apple sticker on it, it's probably illegal.
Suggest that.
But they could put it anywhere in their home.
If we have access to an
Particular-
outlet.
Yeah.
Right,
for our
but you'd
value.
want to put it ideally on an outlet on a circuit that you would like to have backed up, because like I say, if that's your living room or your kitchen or your dining room circuit, that one I believe is going to be backed up in an outage without any action on your part.
That's right. And then you could plug in your VCR in the back. There we go.
I guess this is surprising to me. I didn't realize you could feed power back into the circuit from the
I didn't
outlet.
either. That was one of the questions I had, because I didn't realize that type of capability existed there, but it does, and it's UL listed, so it gave us some confidence that this was something we could pilot responsibly.
Yeah. Have they done a lot of pilots already, or?
They're, typically the Delta Climb companies are seed stage, so they had, I think, either 100 or 200 units produced when we first met with them, and they're going to be doing a production run to get us these 10. So they have a producer, I believe, overseas, and they had produced like 100 or 200 that they had in various testing capacities, in different places. So originally they proposed doing 2 units with us, and we kind of countered and said, let's get it a little bit larger pilot. Let's get 10 so we can, like James said, we might be able to give them to a customer for 3 months, have them test it out, give it to another customer, and maybe we can get 40 or 50 impressions over the course of a year or two, and see what it looks like.
And actually, Darren, they have told me that these units are now ready to ship to us for that.
Oh,
for what
good.
that's worth.
Excellent. We were hopeful to be able to get them, for the spring.
Cool. Sign me up.
We might.
Just one other comment too. It was, it would be helpful to have, if we're gonna vote on something, to have it in the agenda packet. Because this was mentioned, and it's obviously it's like a small scale thing, but I was, just as a request for future.
I thought the contract was sent out.
I didn't.
That's a different one. That was for,
No,
Giant.
there should have been 2 contracts sent out for
Yeah.
approval.
Dynamic Organics was in there, and
Giant.
it may have just been a error. So.
Oh, okay. We thought you had both of them.
Both were provided to be distributed.
It was our intention to have them both in the
Okay.
packet. So,
No big deal.
apologies about that.
No worries. Great. I'm happy to make the motion.
Okay, are there
Wait,
other
I just wanted
questions?
to, yeah, one other comment. It seemed like somebody who had a medical device might be most interested in this.
Could be an interesting use case.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that, and also I think geographic would be, because I live really close to the hospital, we never lose power. Or if
Right.
we do, it comes right back on. But I think there's other people that are further away. So if you're marked, because there's hardly any outages.
There are very few outages. I mean, overall in Burlington, and regardless of kind of where you are. But we're really not looking at it as an outage response item primarily. But you make a good point that there might be people with an individual use case where having that type of reliability 100% of the time for something is really important, and that's a reasonable use case.
Yeah, like an older adult, somebody like that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're just going to get people interested in technology.
Yep. No.
Well, I apologize because the pilot program description was attached to the contract, and we had hoped that you were going to see that. I can certainly provide the pilot program description to you, to the Electric Commission. I had hoped you'd see it. And you can offer suggestions because we can modify that pilot program within the constraints of the contract anyway. Because it does have an intent to target, to try to target these to equity challenged, diverse communities, right? And then backfill with standard residential customers. I'm using broad terms, but so if you'd like, I would be happy to circulate the contract, but most particularly the pilot program description, if that's helpful.
One thing that occurred to me is that the most recent North Avenue News has, obviously we're featured and we have a column. The fire commissioners, I believe, or the fire chief had a column that noted something about battery storage or battery maintenance and the risk for fire. And so I was curious if that discussion has been had, or if you're thinking about how to explain to customers the difference or the similarities with like electric bike batteries and other types of batteries.
There's definitely been conversations, extensive conversations with the fire department about lithium generally and fires. James has been doing a bunch of work to see if we can support capital investment with the fire department through appropriate state available resources or state regulated resources to help them have lithium firefighting equipment to provide greater confidence that if there was such a fire, they'd have the tools needed to deal with it. But certainly, it's not e-bikes, it's electric batteries for a lawnmower or snowblower, laptops even, and phones. There's a lot of lithium batteries kind of within our life. So for us, with something like this, knowing that it's UL listed was kind of a key thing. And we'd provide that, as needed to permitting and others. If it wasn't UL listed and we were giving them to customers, then there's I think a different process you'd have to follow for that type of thing. But generally speaking, there's some precautions that people have to take if they have those types of batteries. But yeah, I think mainly we've been trying to work with fire on things like EV chargers, where those are located, and not putting them in garages that are attached to a building and not accessible if the fire department needed to come there. Those are some of the conversations that we've had around.
And we've also offered the fire department to support them for firefighting equipment, both for in-home lithium-ion fires and vehicular ion fires, lithium-ion fires. And we're in discussions with them about using some of our state funding that's not coming out of rates to help them get the firefighting capability on their trucks.
That's great. Oh, it's good that those conversations are happening.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't have any questions, but I'm just excited about this pilot and excited that you're about the population that can participate in a different type of modularization, so.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to see the results and the communications and.
And certainly when we're, assuming you vote to approve, which I don't want to assume yet, but if you do, we'd welcome your help in amplifying the outreach that we'll make to the community about people who might want to sign up and pilot this with us. So, thank you.
Are we in a place to entertain a motion?
Oh, where was the motion? Can you bring that up again?
There we go.
I move that the general manager shall have the authority to execute with Moduly a power supply related contract and a related non-disclosure agreement substantially in the form provided to the commission with a term not to exceed 5 years for a battery energy storage pilot program.
We have a motion, do I have a second? Motion, seconded. Entertain any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against indicate by saying nay. 5 ayes, no nays, motion passes. Excellent, cool.
Thank you.
On to item number 8, Dynamic Organics contract for Building Giants. Also James and Emily.
So we gave you guys the overview of the Building Giants last meeting, simply because we were hoping not to overwhelm you by both describing the program and then putting contracts in front of you and talking about approving them all at once. So hopefully that was better, was to give you the overview last time and then go back and touch base on the specific stuff that we're looking for out of this contract. This is one of the agreements we mentioned last month. This is a company called Dynamic Organics, which we have worked with before, and they are a Vermont-based company that also came out of Delta Klein. And what we're looking to do is they are going to be providing, and I want to use this term loosely, the commercial industrial component of the Building Giants program. I call it commercial industrial. In point of fact, it's really any central HVAC system. So if, for example, an apartment building had a building energy management system, even though those are residential apartments, it would be served by Dynamic Organics. Does that make sense? It's a question of how the heat, if they're individual, heat pumps controlled by the residents, that would be under the residential side of the program, but this is going to be integrating with building management systems, essentially. So our contract with Dynamic Organics provides for them integrating with the building management systems, primarily the HVAC building controls. They are going to help us with onboarding and enrolling the customers, and this is something we worked with in a pilot with them. They were part of the pilot for the Building Giants program for the 1 year that Freddie ran the test. They are going to design the building control system modifications and the documentation, provide the documentation for those modifications to the customers. They will then handle the programming or reprogramming of the building control system to allow that system to integrate with the Dynamic Organics platform. And that platform is the platform we will use to actually dispatch load control events to these customers. The residential side of the Building Giants will go through not the Emporium Views, sorry, the Sensibos. This side will go through the building management system and through the Dynamic Organics head end, if you will. So in the pilot program, they did 2 large commercial buildings, which are retail customers, and they did the BED Pine Street office successfully. What we're talking about here is a contract cost of about $15,000 per enrolled site, one-time fee, and then a quarterly fee for the program, $7,500 a quarter in year 1, $10,000 a quarter in year 2, $15,000 a quarter in year 3. So, this is in total, if 45 customers, which is what we hope to have, were to sign up, this is an $810,000 contract. but it isn't an $810,000 contract that, having your approval, we immediately go out and send out a check for $810,000. It would be incurred over time as people enroll. And it is cancelable. So if we don't get any enrollments or the program is turning out to be non-economical, we could step away from it. So that's why I gave you sort of the per site, which only happens if we enroll someone, and the quarterly, which we'll incur as long as the program is operating. All of the costs that I showed there are the 100% costs. Those will be 50% grant matched under the Building Giants federal DOE grant. So BED would incur half of the amounts you see on that bullet. The timeline we're talking about is that we need contract authorization, which is a DOE grant project milestone. So when we can say that we have the authorization to sign the contract, we can tell the Department of Energy that we have achieved that milestone. Once we have finalized the contract, we'll start with the outreach. So we're working on the outreach materials, the communications to customers. We're targeting June 2025 for starting to actually enroll customers. And we need to execute the contract no later than when we start to enroll customers. There would probably be no reason to execute this contract sooner than we are communicating with customers, because there's no reason to start incurring the quarterly fixed fee any earlier than we have to. So, we would take your authorization, be capable of entering the contract when we need to, and be able to report to DOE the milestone has been met, and then we would execute sometime probably in the next 3 to 4 months, my guess. The resolution, which is on the next slide, or the motion, is the very similar to the prior one. Both of these contracts, by the way, I forgot to mention, will have standard BED non-disclosure agreements to cover the sharing of customer and BED data and to guarantee its privacy according to our privacy policy and our requirements for privacy. Those requirements will be for matching terms, but with the obligation for confidentiality continuing after expiration of either contract. So Emily, if we go back one slide, I would take questions now. Thank you.
Questions? I'm good. You're all looking at me.
We talked a lot about this last time, I feel like.
Yeah, agreed.
Huh?
Heard a lot last time.
Okay. If there aren't any questions, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me.
I would say the
I'll be
only thing that
interested
would
to
be
see who-
useful is to get an update periodically from the team on like
Right.
how it's going, who's signing up, and how it's working.
Like,
The only thing I would have to think about, is we very carefully not said which 2 retail customers publicly here. So, how many customers, but I'd have to think about whether it would be appropriate to publicly state which customers were doing this.
Demographic character, or just characteristics of, is it a rent or is it?
Oh,
a
general
home?
information, of course,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, we definitely made this retail customers. I mean, I know who they are, but I just didn't want to, say so-and-so is chosen to do this because, I don't know who would consider that competitively sensitive.
So there's already a couple of people that are interested.
Well, there's 2 people that we actually did the pilot with, so I have no doubt that they will subscribe again.
Yeah.
In that update, it'd be good to hear about the flex load management impact, like how the peak reduction is going.
Impact can be described certainly, especially in aggregate form.
Yep.
how often feels like the right frequency to hear how it's going? Like every 3 months, 4 months?
Quarterly?
Quarterly?
Does that seem like
Yeah, I think-
reasonable?
and the cost
I
benefit,
look to
too.
these guys because you know how this is going to go or what.
I mean, I think if it's being subscribed briskly, then quarterly is good, right? If the answer is it's a slow roll and we're, not telling you new things every quarter, we might rethink it, but we can certainly start with quarterly.
I mean, how long does it take to generate enough data to?
Well, on enrollments, you could be reporting, X number of customers have enrolled already, right? You could probably be reporting, how big the loads were in broad terms, especially if you got more than one, right? Without waiting, now impact will take, we'd have to have the actual experience of the load control, which wouldn't even start till mid-year. So the first quarter where we'd have anything to report would probably be Q3 of this year. And then we would have to compile it. So again, I would say the first quarter after we start to have data, we can share the data if it's not too specific. You have to be very, very careful. In the old days when Green Mountain Power was serving IBM, if they said, a single, 80 megawatt customer is participating in the program, everyone would know who it was, right? I mean, so. But yeah, I mean, again, quarterly, and as the information becomes, if it's subscription information, so be it. If it becomes subscription plus data when we have it, so be it.
Yeah, and quarterly would match quite well our reporting for DOE. They're also asking for quarterly. And in particular for these kind of projects, we expect a pretty decent turnaround between we show up at a customer with a pitch packet and then them actually signing on. That could easily be 3, 4, 5 months of turnaround. So when we say we'll start seeing uptake in summer, that is running the clock forward from us showing up to customer buildings next week, effectively.
Yeah, and you're not going to be asking us to create anything new unless you ask us to create something new, I guess. There are metrics we will be reporting to DOE that we will need to prepare regardless. And they are some of the things you already talked about, which is, efficacy, magnitude of load reductions achieved, number of customers, all of that kind of stuff.
There we go. Is it a renter? I think we could, maybe you all can propose a couple of characteristics like renter, homeowner, maybe location.
Well, that won't be under this part of the
Yeah,
program.
so
but yes,
this is larger customers, commercial customers.
Oh, it's only commercial.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This contract, now we will be bringing to you potentially contracts for the residential side. So the request is valid. I'm noting that this is specifically, building management system side.
But same, you could have some general criteria.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Are there any other questions? Or did my audio cut out? Emily, can you hear me?
We're just.
Okay, I can't see on the tiny screen the little insert.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
All right,
Yeah.
All right, so I don't think there are any other questions, so there is a requested motion. Or unless you have a question.
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
make the motion, but I think Michelle's on it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I move that the general manager shall have the authority to execute with Dynamic Organics a power supply related contract and a related non-disclosure agreement substantially in the form provided to the commission with a term not to exceed 5 years for flexible load management services.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by saying nay. 5 ayes, no nays. We have a contract.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
before I
guys.
sign off, can I just
Yeah.
ask you, did the commission, again, I can't see on the tiny screen, want me to circulate the program description for the Moduly program to take a look at?
Yes.
I think that's a yes.
Okay,
Yep.
will do.
Excellent, thank you. A couple of really
Thank you.
cool things going on here. This is great.
Well, and thank the commission, I'd like to thank the commission for their consideration. Thank you all.
Yep. All right, lastly, we have item number 9, that's Commissioner's check-in. If there's anything we've missed over the last hour or so here that anybody wants to bring up, now's the time.
So a couple things. First of all, thanks for the sweatshirts.
Yes.
And then, I don't know if it's executive session or not, but if there are any updates on McNeil?
We would have to probably do an executive session, given that we're in a confidential negotiation on that. So we could, if you'd like, we could plan for one for
Okay,
the
that sounds
February
good.
meeting.
Yep.
We'll just make a note with Elena to add an executive session scheduled for that.
Not a bad idea.
Provide an update.
All right. Anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor of adjournment, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Guys have it, we are adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.